Welcome back to the Irish Mags Show, your number one Irish Newcastle United podcast, brought to you by the Irish Mags NUFC supporters group. My name is Paul. I will be your host for today, and joining me are the Dennis Wise to your Joe Kinnear. It's Mr. Alan Williamson and Mr. Chris O'Martin. How's it going, lads?
How's it going? How are you?
How's it going? Nice to see you. Can I be joking here? Yeah, I think I've got the personality for it. Just ranting and raving at people online, and that famous recording of him. Where he lost his SHITE with everybody.
Yes,
I want to be joking here.
He said the word we don't say on the pod, I believe, in an interview once. So
he did, didn't he? See you next Tuesday.
He definitely did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alan, are you okay being Dennis Wise?
Been called worse, so I'll take that.
Alan, you are wise beyond your years, and probably better than Dennis Wise during his time in Newcastle. The less said about that, the better.
Yeah,
A belated happy St. Patrick's Day to you, lads, and of course to all of our listeners. Lads, I'd say hectic weekends all around, which we'll get to, although I hear Chris Show's had a weekend that ranged from karaoke to New Hoover. So, we'll just leave that there for people to think about and wonder how that's happened on a St. Patrick's Day bank holiday weekend in Ireland. It's a bit odd having just the three of us as well, lads. We've had a load of guests join us over the last few weeks that have probably kept us well behaved and honest. We had Pete one week and Daz from Loaded Mag on separate weeks. We had Cahill from the Irish Mags TikTok army. We had Matty from the Magpie channel, and of course our live special last week with Sean Casey. If you haven't checked out any of those episodes, you really, really should. All are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the internet, wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to have a look. But yeah, lads, it's just the three of us now. Yeah. We know that Chris, you've been through several relaxation programs and spa treatments over the last few weeks because you've had it rough, and I think our listeners have noticed. So I think we were discussing, what should we talk about this week? You have a little sip there, and we were kind of thinking, what should we talk about this week? There is a lot of chaos and carnage happening across the Newcastle community, and in particular in our Irish Mags WhatsApp group after the last few weeks. So we thought we might take on a little mission this week to basically have a look at the season to date. And I suppose we're not going to try and make everyone feel good about life. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But there's a lot of despair and a lot of people in the depths of depression about where we are at this point in the season. And I think it might be a good time to maybe have a look back at, I guess, what I'm calling a series of unfortunate events this season. And most of us will know what we're talking about. We're going to basically rank the top 5 unfortunate events, the top 5 turning points this season that we feel have kind of brought us to where we are now. A lot of bad luck, a lot of unforeseen events, things probably out of everyone's control. And to be clear, this isn't about making excuses. This isn't about justifying, where we are, or being blindly positive about anything. But I think there's some important factors to consider and to discuss before we actually, and before anyone listening, completes your own assessment of Eddie Howe's performance, of the team's performance, and how we've gotten to this point in time. We will also have Chris Show's bad take of the week, which I've been missing in the last little while, my favourite time of the week. And with no game to preview due to the international break, we have an extra special Irish Magstermind quiz for you this week, listeners, as Alan looks to preserve his 100% record on the show. Challenge accepted, Chris.
It won't happen. I'm winning this one.
Okay. All I can say is we shall see. Right, lads, before we do all of that, let's take a little look back at the weekend's events. We'll get to the result in a minute. It wasn't really the result we wanted, I guess. So before we kind of dive into the Man City saga that happened, Alan, from what I can see, a really, really successful meetup over the weekend, if not meetups, plural, across the country. There was. And some huge breaking news of a deal agreed in the Irish Mags community. We'll come back to that in a moment. Tell us what's been happening in the community, Alan.
So we had our usual meetup in the Bleaker, but I'm going to talk about the first one in Quinlan's this week. So we had the lads. Now, I am useless with names, but I do definitely know 2 of them in that photo. I know Dara, who is actually from Portmarnock, who I don't know why he was down in Cork, but he was down there and he met up with the lads. I think it is Paul Slaughter and Minnie Slaughter beside him. There's one other person in the photo, and I apologise. I'm very sorry. I don't know your name. I'm very, very sorry. But they looked like they had a cracking little meetup. Shame about the result, but here we go. And then ourselves, we had 17 people in. We also had a couple of the London mags in who had to leave at half time because the flight time back for them was 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock and they had to leave. But so they're not actually in the photo, but they were there. It was Big Dan. It wasn't Byrne, but it begins with B and I can't remember. I'm sorry. That man was 6'10". He was terrifying.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So we had a cracking meet up again as usual. So 17 of us in, including a fair few of the old Irish Toon Army and Irish Mags who would have originally been in the Halfpenny Bridge all those years ago, which is actually where I cut my teeth and in Newcastle supporters club, shall we say.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it was a great meet up.
Way back when, Alan.
Way back when.
When you were a small, innocent, unknowing little boy, not knowing what was ahead of you as a Newcastle fan. That's probably a good time to pause for a moment, Alan, because I believe there was some news this weekend of you becoming an adult officially. We did have some information in the last week or two that you had got the keys to your new house. And Alan decided that wasn't enough, Krisho. Alan decided, I'm going to go and do one better because there's a lady in that photo in the bleaker that you'll see on the screen who I believe not only was Alan's girlfriend before the match, but is now Alan's fiance since the weekend has ended. Is that correct?
She is indeed. I asked the wonderful Emma to marry me yesterday, and she said yes, of course. 2.5 years later, it's about time.
No.
Congratulations. We'll raise a drink to
Thanks
Alan,
very
folks.
much.
If you are having a drink, whether it's a coffee or water, if you're driving, don't do this. But we'll raise a little toast to Alan and to Emma. Delighted to see. And folks, if you are watching on YouTube, you'll see on the screen right now, it looks like he's proposed with an Irish Mags top on. And how could she say no to that?
That's commitment. That is commitment.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Boys.
You see, I think the association here is, Krisho, every time she sees him in an Irish Mags top, he always looks a bit sorry for himself because something sad has happened. So how could she say no with his whimpering eyes and
puppy eyes on him, like
sad face?
They lost in Man City. Please marry me. No. I'm delighted for you, Al. She's a wonderful woman. Everybody, anyone's ever met her, she's a wonderful woman, and he is punching above his weight. Just so everyone's
I know that.
But she's fantastic, and it's hopefully we'll get her on the show. Maybe we get her on the show.
She absolutely will not come on this show. I can tell you that for nothing.
We know she's an avid listener anyway. She tunes in every week because I have to remove all the things Alan says that he doesn't want her to hear when I'm editing the show. No, Emma, I'm only joking. That never happened.
Yeah, it's a joke. Woo.
Congrats again, Alan. Delighted to
Thanks very much.
delighted for you both. Wishing you all the best. Now, Krisho.
Yes.
I don't want to say this is onto a slightly... we won't be going on to a downer subject yet. Before we get to the match, there was... it was great to see in the group a bunch of the Irish Mags community actually at the game, which isn't as common for us, particularly with away games, because we know tickets are a bit harder to come by for the Irish Mags. Obviously, we don't have the loyalty points that you usually need. But we did have a contingent that managed to get their hands on some tickets in the Etihad, or the Emptyhead, as we were alluded to in some of the photos, including our own Tev, who was seen in various locations throughout Manchester on the day, and it was a long day for him. Krisho, do you want to take us through some of those photos? We had a good few submissions from the Irish Mags community.
It's really cool, like that the guys got tickets now, and people would throw up in the air. How in God's name did they get the tickets? But that's neither here nor there. You know, this is what it's all about. Like I've said many times on the podcast, there's Tev. Tev is always a lover of a photo. Has anyone noticed that in all of these photos, Tev is right in the center? He loves it.
Always.
Yeah, but no, it looks like the lads had a right good crack in that. Just when I see these photos coming, I love to see them, but then it's kind of like, oh, look, this is what I wish I could go to every match myself and hang out and have pints. Because as you can see on the table, there is many pints before the game. I don't know whether these photos are after the game or they're before the game. I think they might be before the game, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
But the lads had the crack almighty, and they got some good seats too, as you can see.
Yeah.
Tev and Hainsey sent in the shots of the seats that they got. Maybe it was that empty. Was it a full? I don't know. Was it a full crowd at that match?
It did look like a sellout throughout the game, but yeah, it doesn't look great there.
Doesn't look right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably... I think Tev's one is probably a bit earlier, but I think it was Tev that did say even during the game there was blue seats to be seen, and they're noticeable because the seats are blue, which doesn't, it's maybe it's an attempt to blend in the empty seats with the blue jerseys, but obviously on a cold day or a wet day, they get exposed. But yeah, it's great to see, obviously, Irish Mags on tour, especially going to the away games. Unfortunately, the result didn't really go to plan, Alan. It was for me. It was a weird game. We played a lot better than I think we did against Chelsea. I think that you could look at it and go, well, Man City got 2 slightly fortunate goals with 2 deflections, especially the first one off Dan Burn. I could have gone anywhere, and it's ended up looping over into the corner. The flip side of that, though, Al, is I feel like City didn't even have to go up into really top gear. Is that fair to say?
They cruised throughout the whole game. Look, City have that unwavering ability to just stifle teams to death, and it's exactly what they did to us. They kept the ball. Bernardo Silva just said, "I'll have a pop down." Took a deflection, ended up in the back of the net. The exact same thing happened 10 minutes later, and you're going, "Well, that's the game dead and buried." Well, maybe if Isak had got that goal, but come here, what a save! Nothing more Isak could really do with it. He hit it well. He hit it into the ground, but Ortega got to the ball. City, they're the best team in the world for a reason. So to only lose 2-0 to them at home in a cup game, it's not a bad result in my eyes. Obviously, you don't want to lose games, but we weren't embarrassed. Yes, there was times where we were chasing shadows, but City can do that to anybody in world football. Like, they won the Champions League last year for a reason. It's no disgrace to lose them 2-0 at home, if you know what I mean. So take it as it comes.
Yeah, it is. It's a funny one because, like you said, we did have chances. I think Dan Burn had maybe it's a half chance, maybe a bit more than half, maybe a 70% chance where he doesn't take a shot. And you have to take chances against a side like City. And, going back on their goals, I actually was shouting at the TV, "Close him down!" Like my missus was like, "Calm down." But I was literally roaring because I couldn't understand. Like, I think it was basically Bruno and maybe Longstaff were both coming back, but both ended up ball watching a bit. And suddenly Bernardo has all this space, which for a player like him, you just can't give.
Yeah.
Krisho,
Yeah.
when you saw the team sheet, and especially that change to, do you call it a back 3, back 5, basically 3 centre backs, 2 wing backs. Did it give you much confidence? Were you happy to see a change? Gordon obviously included, considering we'd spoken about him last week about that injury. And I mean, God, talk about conclusions being jumped to when there was 8 and 9 months being thrown around and he ends up starting the following week. But Longstaff still keeping his place despite talks about his performance and injuries. And probably the most disappointing thing was Livramento not there. And I guess that's just standard Newcastle United behaviour when our first choice right back gets injured. So too does the second choice one. That's probably the story of our season.
No, I mean, I was pleased to see a change. And then, even though it was kind of half an eye on Ireland versus Scotland in the rugby and the match here, I was, I'd be all right if it was expansive or if it was different tactics as such, even though it was 3 at the back and it looked a bit of a different shape to give us a bit more protection. And yeah, you're right, Al. It was 2 deflected goals against a very, very good Man City. But at the same time, okay, Isak had that chance. But other than that, it kind of looked like we parked the bus a little bit. Maybe other people don't think that. Maybe you guys don't think that. But it looked to me like we just set ourselves up to defend and try our best, on the counter. That's the best we can do against Man City. And I don't believe that because that's not true. Like, we can play just as well as Man City. We have just about to say we've just as good of players as Man City, but hang on, for sure. Maybe this white wine's gone to my head. But the 3 at the back, I kind of went, oh no, it is something different, but oh no, they're gonna have 39 shots on goal or something. We're gonna get hammered here. But okay, we didn't get hammered. But I kind of knew, to put a fine point on it, and I hate to say this, I kind of knew we weren't going to win. Is that sad? Is that how far I've come now in this season? I kind of knew we weren't going to win at all.
I don't think
even
so.
Even from the start.
Yeah.
That's
sad. The
European
champions, world champions. This is Man City. You know what I mean? At times they haven't been their best this season, and it gives you hope. And look, we've beaten them before, but we know what they can do. We know what they can switch on when it matters. And ultimately, even though they didn't come out and just batter us, like let's be real, they didn't. We gave them a couple of chances. You can't give a team like City a sniff or half chances.
Yeah.
And to your point, Krisho, if they were really parking the bus, if we're really trying to shut them down, we would have been closing them down. We would have been marking a bit tighter and not allowing those shots off. So yeah, it goes back to that protection element that we spoke about last week with Sean as well. Alan, one other thing that I suppose definitely changed a bit of momentum on the game. And I haven't seen this for a long time from Eddie Howe or from many managers, a quadruple substitution. And you and me like a bit of Football Manager.
Yes.
And we've definitely done this regularly
Yes.
in Football Manager. But this isn't the Football Manager world.
No.
But I feel like for a moment I was like, is this a statement? Do you know what I mean? As in like, right, lads, the lads out there, it's not working. Get you off. As well as look, let's just not desperate measures, but let's kind of throw the book at it and see.
Yeah.
Let's bring on 4 fresh players to just change the game. And I'm fairly sure that they did. Miley was sharp. Lewis Hall also looked very good, lads, for the brief cameo.
I thought he genuinely looked like one of our best players. He also looked like he's after putting on about 2 stone of pure muscle. That man looked like he was betting to his Newcastle jersey, and if he keeps doing what he's doing and he ends up like that next year, he will 100% be our starting left back. I thought he was excellent. He came on, he was Dan Burn. We know Dan Burn's limitations. Like, you can see him when that ball's rolling out to him 30 yards out, you're going, hit the thing. Takes a touch and tries to find a pass that just wasn't there. It just reminds me of a couple of years ago we played Man United and Paul Dummett, the ball rolls to him the last minute and he unleashed this thing that took a deflection and ended up in the top corner and we drew the game. Dan Burn had done that and it goes into the back, and if it had gone into row Z, it goes into row Z. You're not expecting it. But I feel that if that ball had fallen to Lewis Hall, he would have hit that thing, and I'm going, might not have gone into the back of the net, don't get me wrong, but it's more of an output that we need. And I just think he looked like he was kind of filling into himself and looked like he's starting to step into what we thought we were signing at the start of the season. And Louis Miley came on for Longstaff. Look, we know Longstaff's been a little bit injured, shall we say, but Miley looked 5 times the player of him. So it was it was an injection of pace into the team that was struggling at the time. Like we were being overrun in the midfield. Isaac and Gordon were anonymous for large parts of the game. Let's be honest about it. Like, we were trying to spring them free with the early ball over the top, but like Man City's defense was reading it left, right, and centre. I don't think we got in once through it, but it was the right idea, I suppose, but just never worked.
Yeah, that's fair. And look, a long time ago, if we said we're going to go to play Man City, you'd just be praying to not get embarrassed. You use that word on it because it's fair. We could have done better. We could say that about many, many games this season. But I feel like just it's a culmination of, another really, really tough game up against it. And it's hard to shake that off, that feeling, I guess. We feel it. I'm sure they feel it as well in terms of the players. I guess what it does do is allow us to just focus on, we've got 10 games left in the league. Let's get as many players back as we can. And let's actually give this a run. We did it last year. I think it was after the last international break last year. We actually went on a really good run. So if we can get a few of those players back, there's mentions of Nick Pope, there's mentions of Callum Wilson. These are players we haven't seen for a while. So that would be lovely, lads. And it'll give us something to look forward to down the line. As I spoke about at the top of the show, we've been enjoying doing our mini rankings over the last few weeks, lads. We've been breaking down some expert analysis between ourselves, in between, crying in matches and drinking loads of pints. And even recently, I found myself reflecting a lot on the season. I see what's going on in the WhatsApp groups. I see what's going on Twitter. There's a lot of mass hysteria about Eddie Howe and about certain players.
It's coming very soon with the bad take. It's coming.
Oh, eyes emoji for that one. And I just find myself kind of looking back and going like, have we been very unlucky? Are other teams in a similar boat? Yes, we've had injuries. We'll come to that. Other teams have had injuries, but there's a lot more than just injuries, I feel, over the last 8 months. So as I was thinking about it, I said, I'm going to stop thinking about this and talk to the lads about it on the podcast because that makes sense. So, it's kind of laughable, some of the bad luck events or the unfortunate events that we've had. So we said we'd get together, put together a bit of a ranking of those unfortunate events, what we feel were the turning points, the bad luck moments in our season, to help give some context as to, where we are right now as we speak with that 10 games to go. So, lads, in the spirit of all things positive as we talk about unfortunate events and bad luck, who wants to go first with our initial number 5 unfortunate event of the season?
I'll go for number 5, right? And number 5 is kind of one of the earliest things that happened. We got the glimpse of this world-class, dare I say, player from AC Milan with his, I'm going to call it a cameo now, but Sandro Tonali against Villa, how well he played, how well it looked like he fit in. I thought, we've done it again. We've got a dream midfielder. We've done it again, just like we did with Bruno. It's going to be Bruno, Joelinton, and Sandro. Oh, I love it. But
Dreams.
for it was just that 5-1 against Aston Villa feels like a decade ago. It's just when it came through about the gambling. I'm trying to be positive again, and maybe it's because of this delicious white wine. But listen, that could have been a 3-year ban, so we could have been talking about laughably unfortunate event. But at least it was only 10 months. But a 10-month ban, I mean, honestly, what a way to, as our balloon was floating up, just to pop it out of the sky already. And then I think in the same game, am I wrong? Harvey Barnes damaged the underside of his toe. Just to throw in an extra little bit for that game at the start of the season of unfortunate events. So we lost our 2 signings in the first game of the season. I mean, come on. We talk about tying one hand behind Eddie Howe's back. But
yeah, the metaphor of bursting the balloon or the bubble is really appropriate here. I was at that Villa game we've mentioned before. Sandro Tonali flies into the box like a train in the night.
Wow.
And smashes it home, and it's pure elation, and it kind of silences all those people that were saying he didn't want to move to Newcastle. He begrudgingly arrived. He never smiles. He was smiling when he scored that goal. And in addition to Barnes, which we'll come to, like marquee signing, a big player, a huge plan. We spoke about it with Sean last week in terms of how Eddie would like to play, and obviously he's only new into the squad, but like we know what he can do. We've seen what he has done at AC Milan, Champions League semi-final last year. And, if we look back on the last few seasons, or even beyond, like obviously Ivan Toney is a standout, but this does not happen often. Loads of people were saying, people should know about this. Like, I'm glad to say that nobody knows what goes on in my bank account, right? Even my other half, she knows nothing and she never will, especially when I go on my adventures in Newcastle. So... if nobody's seeing this coming, right, and you're like, okay, we're getting a really good player for a deal we're very happy with, and then that's taken away, that's a real kick at the beginning of a season. And yeah, it kind of set the tone, Alan, I suppose, for more unfortunate events to unfold, because you have our 4th unfortunate event of the season.
Yeah, so our 4th unfortunate event of the season is Dan Ashworth's head being turned by a certain club in Manchester that wear red. So
Crisho's team.
Yeah, exactly, Crisho's team. So look, Dan Ashworth was brought in to be the man behind turning our beloved club into one of the powerhouses in Europe. Much like when he was at Brighton, halfway through the job, someone knocked on the door and he went, "I want to leave." Look, he was brought in as the man to be the centre cog to employ the right type of people, and I'm just hoping that he's already employed enough of the right people that we can seamlessly replace him, or alternatively go down a little bit of a differing route and maybe go with he was the director of football but was a bit hands-off in the football sense of it. He was more of a director of business. I want someone who might be a little bit more hands-on at the football aspects of it, but come here. Clubs like Manchester United don't come knocking on your door for members of staff unless they are very, very sought after, and much like we did to Brighton, there's nothing we can really do. The man wanted to leave. We have a clause in his contract that they have to pay the money if they want them. So it's up to them now. It's tough on us, but what can you do about it? We'll replace him. We'll move on. We'll keep going.
Yeah, like it's... The way I think about this is that we don't see the behind the scenes things, right? And, people would think, oh yeah, whatever's going on the pitch with Eddie Howe and the players is nothing to do with Dan Ashworth. And, this shouldn't be a big issue, but I see this as a major disruption to a machine or a work in progress. And, if you're Eddie Howe, I assume Eddie and Dan, there's a lot of talk about Eddie Howe players and Dan Ashworth players, but like these guys are working together with others to build this future plan of Newcastle United. And the reason we're, I suppose, pitching this as an unfortunate event, Crisho, is nobody probably saw this coming. In the middle of a season that we already had challenges around, to just give the board something else to worry about, to give the manager something else to worry about, interviews, more newspaper headline, all this kind of stuff. We just didn't need it.
Yeah, I mean, did Sandro Tonali's betting thing cost him his job? I mean, it seems to me like you saw Eddie Howe's response. I know he's a bit of a cool customer, already, but he was kind of like, all right, yeah, we move on. Yeah, it's not interrupting what I do. It's not interrupting any of the targets we have. Whatever. See you later. Bye. But like Alan said, hopefully he's like, if you use the analogy of building a new sports car, we just need somebody else to just continue to help Eddie drive it. Do you know what I mean? And be a because essentially, I'd like to think that they've already put the people in place. What's his name? Andy Howe, is it? It is Andy Howe, isn't it? Yeah. He didn't get a promotion, but he basically got laterally placed, so that's just to aid until the end of the summer, until we get whoever it is, director of football in. But I firmly believe that it's not as bad, Paul, as you think. It's not as a hindrance. I think he already has put in a lot of the people we need, and the database. Hopefully, the database that he built up over the last 15 years, we've just taken that now because it's property of Newcastle United. Bye, see you later. We'll take a copy of that. You can go and sit at home in your garden. I never liked the man. I'm going to say it to you straight out. I never liked the man. I don't like the way he dresses. He's too small. He's a weird looking dude. I didn't like the way he talked to Anthony Gordon on that video. It was a bit weird. It was like, hey, buddy, weird. So I'm glad he's gone. Yeah, I'm glad he's gone. So I don't think it's any disruption whatsoever. It is unfortunate because it makes Man United fans think that they're better than us. We took your boy. We're a bigger club. We came in and took your fella. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Andy Cole 2.0. See you later.
Yeah. And if it shows anything, it's a testament of if they go and spend 20 million to get a sporting director or technical director, whatever you want to call it, it shows you what a mess they've made of things for the last few years.
Oh yeah.
I just don't want it to be a thing where, whether it's players, other people internally, you look at someone who's at the top level, and you kind of. It reminds me of when in any job, if you see a senior person or a manager or a leader leave, you're kind of going, are they jumping off a sinking ship here? What does that represent? And this is different, right? This is elite football at a multi-million-pound environment. But you just, again, as I said, disruption, unnecessarily things to think about. If this happens in the summer, maybe you feel a bit better about it because it's not in the middle of a season. And again, that's why we would say this is an unfortunate event and definitely unplanned. Speaking of unplanned, I don't even know where to begin on this one, Chriso. Maybe this kind of winds me up, so I'm just going to hand it over to you, Chriso, because I can't talk about this without punching desks and tables and walls.
Look, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but I am when they're good crack. I'm just saying, right? The ball that had our number on in each of these draws must have vibrated, or somebody was told beforehand. There's an anti-Newcastle agenda out there, right? Carabao Cup, FA Cup, Champions League, right? Like we've discussed, we could have had Port Vale, Exeter, Mansfield, Middlesbrough. No, we didn't. Carabao Cup, we got Man United away, Man City at home, Chelsea away. I mean, come on, right? Classically coined, come on. Seriously, I watched some of these draws, and I know our listeners did as well on TV, and a couple of times I saw the guy looking down into the pot as he picked the ball. Just calling it. If you watch them back over, not to go, put tinfoil on my head. FA Cup, Sunderland away, Blackburn away, Fulham away, Man City away. Give me a break. I mean, honestly, give me a break. And that is off the Champions League draw we got. Which is like, if you automatically pick that on FIFA, you just do the draw again. Because you'd be like, I'm not playing in that. I just want to do the draw again. Or pick the teams yourself. I mean, essentially, it couldn't have been more of a difficult draw for the Champions League. So again, I'm sure Eddie Howe, especially with the latest one where it was Man City away for the quarterfinal of the FA Cup, I'm sure even him and how calm-headed he is, he was probably like, come on, seriously now. So in terms of unfortunate events, I wish we had a separate bowl for our draws, because that's one of the worst seasons, Alan. I don't know about you, but that's one of the worst seasons in at least 2 or 3 decades. In terms of draws in League Cup and FA Cup.
Yeah, League Cup, FA Cup, they're awful. Champions League draw, I absolutely loved it. I don't see that as a negative. I absolutely love that Champions League draw. I don't care what anyone says.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
But in the theme of look, right? Yeah,
it's awful luck to be drawn into that, if you know what I mean. I just find the Carabao Cup draw, that's a joke. Man United, Man City, Chelsea. That's how can you be that unlucky to draw them three in an open draw, to draw arguably 3 of the top 7 sides in it, 8 sides in it, not including ourselves because we can't count ourselves as one of them yet. So it's just chaos.
I've already got it. Right. The FA have set us up so that Eddie Howe fails and he gets sacked at the end of the season and he goes to England and replaces Gareth Southgate. Boom. Just came to me.
Chris Shaw, you told us you got a new Hoover. You didn't tell us you got a new crystal ball. You can't have both.
It comes with a crystal ball. The Hoover comes with a crystal ball.
It's wild. I mean, Chris, you mentioned some teams that were floating around that we could have drawn against Port Vale and Mansfield and Exeter and Newport. I think were in there. Even the Champions League, like Copenhagen. In fairness, Copenhagen gave Man United a good scene in one of those games. But teams like them, Shakhtar, fight like there was permutations where we would have had a much easier group. And just to go back on the FA Cup, right? People might say, "Oh, what's wrong with Sunderland, Fulham, and Blackburn?" We had 4 away fixtures in a row. And I'm just going to give you a stat here, lads. None of Chelsea's cup draws have been away from home. I'm looking at the FA Cup now. They've obviously just played Leicester at home. They played Liverpool at home. They played Villa. There was a replay on that one, but they were drawn home. Like, all of their draws have been at home. Again, we don't want Chris to put on the tinfoil hat. He'll never take it off. And he's only just back from his relaxation and spa treatments. But it's just, again, you're Eddie Howe, you're sitting there, the managers attend the draw, and you're just like, he must be just sitting there going, it's coming. Yeah. There's no point doing the draw, just give it to me now. And not to add more fuel to the conspiracy, but weren't we the last ball out of that draw on more than one occasion?
Yes, we were. I mean, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, very bizarre, right? And I've no problem saying it on the internet. I knew we were going to get Man City in the quarterfinal draw. And that's bizarre. We're going to get Man City. And loads of people in our group, in the community group, on the web chat, we're saying, we're going to get Man City. We're going to get Man City. We're going to get Man City. And then, boom, we got Man City. Hang on now. I mean, what's going on here? So
yeah, I remember seeing a tweet as well. I can't remember who put it out there, but someone actually put it out 3 hours before the draw. Just give us City now, fast forward, so we don't have to go through all the nonsense. Maybe that was you, Chris. I'm starting to lean toward, we were going to call this week's podcast, the series of unfortunate events, but it's going to be like a series of unfortunate fortune tellers, the way Chris Show's going on, because he's predicting a lot in hindsight, Alan.
Hindsight. Detective Inspector hindsight.
Indeed. And then following on from that to our second unfortunate event, bad luck moment of the season. And again, I find it hard to talk about this one without the rage and the fire in the eyes. And I suppose, Alan, it kind of spins off that Champions League draw discussion, because it wouldn't have happened if we didn't get that group of death that you so much enjoyed, which brought us to this moment.
Yeah, so it's the 98th minute in Paris, and we're looking like we're about to get probably one of the most impressive victories in our club's history. Ball takes a nick off Tino Livermento's tie, bounces up and hits him in the arm, and the referee points to the spot, despite the fact the rule is if it hits another body part and then hits the arm, it is not a handball. So that wasn't an unfortunate event. That's just a referee who doesn't know what he's doing. It's this drives you mad. Like, you have VAR to stop mistakes happening. VAR and all their brain power looked at that and went, yep, give the penalty. It's very hard not to agree with Chris Shaw's tinfoil hat philosophy of they're just out to get us. It's just unfortunate. We'll keep going at that, but it was a joke. As
I'm going to go one further, Alan. It was bollocks, and I've decided that bollocks is an acceptable word on the show this week, lads. There was talks of UEFA rules are different. There was this, that, the other. Anyone who's in football, right? And like, I remember seeing the Twitter feed, the X feed, the Twix feed after that decision. And it wasn't just Alan Shearer, it wasn't just, ex-players. Gary Lineker is saying it. I think maybe even never, well-respected ex-footballers who know this game inside out, who are impartial, who have no reason to be biased, are most of them were saying, how are you giving that as a penalty? And that's because anyone who's played football knows that Livermento cannot do a single thing about it. The contact is minimal. It's the upper arm. It's come in off whether it was thigh, his chest. It's an absolute joke. And as we said, for it to happen in the 98th minute, to then hand the ball to Kylian Mbappe of all people, to give them an undeserved point after we've beaten them 4-1 in the first leg. Ultimately, lads, and I'll go so far as to say that cost us a place in the next round, even though we went on and lost to Milan. And now we're sitting here looking at both PSG and Dortmund are in the quarterfinals. And I cry a little bit inside every time I see that
No,
try.
I mean, even ironically, Thierry Henry on that crazy show he's on, that's not really about football, uh, said that was clearly not a handball. The cheek of him after what he did to us in 2009. The cheek of him.
It's up there. The two of them
No,
are
I
the two of
mean,
them are up there in terms of things that really. You don't want to come up to me after 6 points and ask me about Thierry Henry's handball or now the Tino Livramento handball. It's not going to end well.
Yeah.
sickening it is.
Lads, these are two things that are very much driven by French, and as you know, my other half, she is also French. Why is this happening in my life? I don't know. I think next week we might need to do a series of unfortunate events in my life, and it'll become a right therapy session indeed. Right, that brings us on to number one and our final unfortunate event of the season. Now, this is a bit of a theme more than an event, and this one is injuries. And before we dive into it, lads, a lot of the standard responses that we're getting now in March, at this point in the season are, every team's had injuries. Man United, I nearly did it. Man United have had injuries. Spurs have had injuries. Now Liverpool are having injuries. I think there's a lot of short memory here, and also we need to kind of box off a period of time where I'm just going to read you a list. Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, Sven Botman, Dan Byrne, Matt Targett, Joe Linton, Joe Willock, Elliot Anderson, Harvey Barnes, Jacob Murphy, Alexander Isak, Callum Wilson. That's 12 first team players who all in their own right would be pushing for a starting place in Eddie Howe's first 11 in the majority of games, who over the course of, what are we looking at, lads? 2 to 3 months? Have all basically been missing. Some of them have dipped in and out. Maybe there's a couple of repeat injuries. Some of them have been slightly on the longer term end of things. And some of them are just freak injuries. And, we'll all remember, like, Nick Pope goes to make a save that he's probably done 1,000 times in his career, dislocates his shoulder. Dan Byrne, what did he do, Christian? He broke his back or landed on his, basically.
He's coccyx. He's coccyx, I think it's called.
I mean, it is a sore one. Let's not take that away. But again, how often does that happen? Sven Botman had a knee injury that seemingly nobody knew what was wrong with it, and maybe it's even still there. We may find out the hard way. Jacob Murphy also did his shoulder. He must have overexerted himself doing the old wave goodbye there, going back about a year ago. Harvey Barnes, you mentioned a Chriso, random broken toe. Like, I'm okay with injuries that happen while you're playing the game of football. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you see a player in a 50-50 challenge or a bad clash or a tackle or whatever, or they pull up with hamstring and so on. I'm not okay with this. This is just beyond kind of madness. And, I named out 12 names there, some of whom still aren't back. But over the last 2-3 months, and pretty much since maybe in and around the end of the Champions League campaign, maybe sparked on by the Nick Pope injury, it's just been a constant theme. And what people forget then is we get these players back, they're not match fit. They're not, they haven't been playing that energy level of football.
Yeah.
They're not sharp, they're not confident, they're coming into a team that also isn't confident. And ultimately, where it leaves me in terms of unfortunate events is we've fallen back on to a bunch of players who were there when Eddie Howe arrived. And look, it's great that they're there and fair play to them for doing what they've done. But we're talking about a bunch of players from the Steve Bruce era, a bunch of players who, some of them were around when we were playing in the Championship and when we got promoted. But ultimately, it's fallen back on them, bar the likes of Bruno, maybe, and Gordon, who, thank God, have stayed fit through the majority of this. And yeah, this is before we talk about, Isak pulling every muscle he has or Callum Wilson being made of glass. I don't see how anyone else, other fans in the league can say, oh yeah, we all have the same. It's just not the case.
It's the whole team. It's the whole team. I mean, thank God we had some substitutions. Thank God we had some players that we were able to build a start 11. At some stage this season, I think someone was thinking we're gonna get deducted 3 points because we can't field the team or put out a full match day squad. It became a bit laughable. This pictorial one with Callum Wilson. I mean, he's not a wrestler. He's a footballer. Like, wrestlers pull their pecs and all the rest out when they're wrestling and stuff. What was he up to in Dubai? What was he doing with the missus? I mean, he pulled his pectoral muscle. I'll tell you
Do you
what
think,
happened.
Krisho, do you think he stands in front of the mirror like that guy Terry Crews? You know your man from his Brooklyn Nine-Nine and just starts flexing. I won't do it here for you lads. I can do it, but I won't do it now. I've chosen not to. Is that it?
Tin hat. Here's the tin hat. Ready
here
for
we
more
go.
tin hat? This is classic. Here's the tin hat, right? And this is another reason why Dan Ashford has been put on gardening leave. Is essentially Eddie Howe was happy for Wilson to go to Atletico Madrid. Wilson was delighted with it. Wilson and his representatives went to Dan Ashford. Dan Ashford said, "It's not happening." Closed the door. Boom. He said, "Right, F yous, I'm going to Dubai to chill out. See you later, good luck." And not saying he wasn't slightly injured, but he's not as injured to the end of the season as people think he is. You probably won't see Callum Wilson. You might get one chance to see him at St James's Park before he leaves Newcastle, and it'll be a substitution for 45 minutes. But I think he's gone. But that one took the biscuit in sense of all of the unfortunate injuries for Callum Wilson to pull his pectoral. What is he, The Rock? I mean, come on, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Again, it's another freak injury, Alan. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
These are not the things you normally expect to happen to professional athletes in the game of football, in the Premier League, and they've all come in and around a similar period of time. And I think when we look back at the season, and as we said, folks, listening at home, the objective of this is not to just say, here's all the excuses why we're not doing well. But unless you really sit down and, you have to look at these things in context. You have to look at them in isolation. If you still feel then, that, look, we still should have performed better with the players we had at those times, there are moments where we should have. We haven't blessed ourselves in glory playing against Luton at home or Bournemouth or Forest or whatever it was. But I don't see how anyone can really stand behind and say it's not an issue, Alan. Unless you're
not
about
at
to.
all. No, not at all. And then the other thing is about the injuries. It was never that we'd get one left back would get injured. Dan Burn and Matt Targett would get injured in the same week, and you'd be out for 6 weeks together. And you're going, okay, we'll put
Isaac and Wilson.
Yeah, put Tino put Tino left back from right back. Trippier gets injured, and then Tino gets injured, and you're going, all four of our fullbacks are now out injured at the one time. What are we meant to do? Like, it's the one. Like, obviously, when I say this one made me laugh, Elliot Anderson's back injury happened getting out of bed.
Oh, come on. I mean,
Like that, now, I don't know how true it is, but that's
He must be on the top bunk.
Yeah, like come on, like it's mental. Like doing a back injury, getting out of bed, and you're going. If we actually tell people all these excuses, they'd be like, they're making this up as they go along. It's just like Alexander Isak missed 5 games in 4 seasons before he joined Newcastle United. He's missed 26 games since he joined us.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, actually, when you put those numbers, because we're used to it with Callum Wilson. Yeah. He's always kind of had that around him. It's worse now as he's getting older and so on. But for a player like Isak, and intensity might be a thing, different pace and so on. He's obviously quite skinny, quite bandly. Like it's, he hasn't had a chance to build up those strengths because he's had to play. And we basically played the season with one relatively fit striker, as in fit enough to play, maybe start for most of the season. And even the last thing I'll say, and it was only a short space. It was even just one game. We'd lost Nick Pope. Dubravka got sick. How many clubs have had to play their third choice keeper this season? Whereas, we've had to play Karius. And no disrespect on Karius. The fact of the matter is he's the third choice. And not many third choice keepers get a game in a league season.
Yes.
Premier League.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Now, I'm sure we all feel really good at the moment, lads. We started the pod on such a high with Alan's news and Krisho's new Hoover. And obviously we've gone through some of the bad luck, unfortunate events. But I think where we can bring it all around to is, it definitely helps me to think about the situation with a bit more context, with a bit more of a rounded head before I'm kind of thinking about, is Eddie Howe the right manager? Certain players need to come, go, whatever it is. And Sean made a good point last week when he was talking about Sean Longstaff. He said you never hold it against a player for his ability. There's effort and there's will, and if a player isn't trying or bad attitude. But he wouldn't hold it against someone like Sean Longstaff just because he's playing to the best of his ability. Do you know what I mean? There is a limit on ability. No disrespect to Sean Longstaff, of course. He's been great for us when needed, most of the time. But it's just, if we either remove all of those events or, lads, we focus on the next 10 games ahead, my mind goes to, I still remember that opening lineup, that 11 and subs that we went with against Villa, where we had Wilson on the bench, where we had Barnes on the bench. And that's where I like to think, okay, if we can, our bench is starting to look better. If we can get these players back, fit, sharp, not as many of them got on the international break, maybe, just maybe, we can do a bit of a bounce with the last 10 games of the season. And who knows, we might have something exciting to talk about in a few weeks' time. Krisho, are you convinced?
No. But I love you guys, and we spend a lot of time with each other, and I don't want you to be down all the time. But there is a chop and a change coming. Let me put it straight to you. There's a chop and a change coming. That's it.
You mean at the club and not on this podcast, right?
No. Maybe it depends. It depends. But it's at the club. Yeah, at 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll pause that, and we'll hold that for a future moment, because Krisho's been doing a lot of fortune telling, crystal ball. Forget about Paul the Octopus. This is Krisho, the fortune teller of the Irish Mags. Right. Well, something I know is definitely going to give us a positive spin on life events, Krisho, is the return of my favourite segment and my favourite time of the week. And it is, of course, Krisho's bad take of the week. And I believe, as the song goes, this one is a belter.
It is. Look I just want to do another disclaimer. We're 16 episodes in, right? This is me relaying a bad take from a collection of many bad takes. Last few episodes, I think sometimes it's slipped in that maybe you guys, listeners might have thought that it was my opinion. It isn't. I just get caught up in the whirlwind of it all. But this one, honestly, wait until all of our listeners hear this. Okay, listen, right? We've gone backwards under Eddie Howe. Even since Steve Bruce left, right? And I can't believe I just mentioned Steve Bruce's name on our podcast, because I kind of promised myself I never would, right? But to get into one final and get fourth last season, to two quarterfinals, and probably, let's say we get 8th or 7th this season, right? That is major steps backwards, right? And it all falls not on Sneaky Dan on his garden leave and his poor choices, not on the crappy medical team who basically have destroyed our squad. I'd like to have a chat with the guy that does the training pitches as well, because something's clearly going on with ankles going over and lads falling over and their shoulders being pulled out playing table tennis or foosball. But look, here's it is. We've gone backwards, right? And wait, you hear this now, honest to God, now I'm paraphrasing, right? Eddie Howe is overrated, right? He's only given this mythical credit in the bank because he's an English media darling, right? Whoever wants to be called that, right? We won't. I can certainly tell you that in the future. So with him in charge, we'll never go forward to where we all expected and wanted. What? To win the Champions League and win the Premier League every year in a row? Give me a break. If they finish outside the top half of the table, he should be sacked. No questions asked, right?
Oh.
I never rated him. Now, I'm not saying this myself now. This is paraphrasing somebody else. I never rated him. I said it from day one, and I was slated. The drop-off under his stewardship has been shocking. Literally, and this is, again, paraphrased, literally any other manager would have been given the bullet by now, right? So eat that up, lads, because that is the bad take of the week, that we have gone backwards under Eddie Howe. Alan? Paul?
Bollocks.
Right? Yeah. There we go. Right. Straight in there.
Should we just call this week's episode, quotation marks, bollocks?
I think it is the name.
Wow. I mean, it's terrible. It's 2 quarterfinals and probably 7th or 8th with what we've just talked about for the last 10 minutes. All the unfortunate things that have happened, all of the injuries of a solid 11, starting 11. And Eddie Howe still has us in the top half of the league and getting to 2 quarterfinals. So to suggest that we've gone backwards, you're looking at the wrong thing. Somebody must not be watching, looking at the stats correctly.
Yeah, like if you were to say to me that the take here was we've gone backwards since Eddie Howe took over since last season, you can kind of go, okay, yeah, last season we hit Champions League football, we had a cup final, and we're obviously not close to that at the moment. We've obviously talked about many of the things we feel are major contributors to that on the show. But when you start talking about, starting to compare it to Steve Bruce era, I remember this era very, very well. I'm sure most of us do. We've been to the games, we've seen the football. We've been in the championship twice in the last, 10 seasons. This isn't all Steve Bruce, of course, but he's been mentioned too many times. I'm not going to say it anymore. If you say it 5 times, he'll appear.
Christ.
I very much sometimes when we have a bad take per show, you can kind of put yourself in someone's shoes. I don't want to see these shoes.
No.
And
clown
the
shoes.
feet and the person's head.
Clown shoes. But I mean,
Clown shoes.
Guys, look, listen. This. Look at as a football supporter, and we all know it. On it, we have to when we're frustrated, right? But we're quite level-headed supporters, right? We've gone through the bad times, we've seen it, and everyone listening, I'm sure you get a bit emotional, you get a bit angry, and you go, "Well, that was Dan Burns' fault." I was saying it to Sean last week. That's Sean Longstaff's fault. That's that's the medical team's fault. Miggy, well, yeah. It's never been Jeff Hendrick's fault, by the way. Never been Jeff Hendrick's
We
fault.
nearly got away with it. We nearly got away with one.
So close. 51 minutes.
So close, guys. But this is not right to focus any of it on Eddie Howe. And I genuinely mean that. It's been very unfortunate series of events, which we've just explained. And I think just just think of the first game next season, about how exciting it will be to have Eddie Howe and Tyndall and a full, no injuries at all, full squad, new players included, Sandro back in with Bruno and Jolinton. I mean, just look to that. We've just been bruised this season, lads. We've just been bruised with unfortunate events. But yeah, any mention of Steve Bruce again is an immediate withdrawal from the group chat. Oh no. It's a cabbage. A cabbage just rolled into the room. No, get out of here.
Welcome, Steve Bruce, to the Irish Magnum. Not under our watch. Excellent. Well, look, thank you for that bad take of the week. I'll tell you one thing it's done. It's given me a smile back on my face after going through some of those more tougher elements. And that's all we wanted from that, Krisha, so thank you.
Okay.
I can tell you what might remove a smile from Krisho's face, though, and it is time, before we finish up the show, for an extra special rendition of the Irish Magstermind quiz. Well, Krisho. How are you feeling with another
I'm
quiz?
nervous. Do you know what? People might say, people make comments like, that guy was sweating under that hat all the time. Well, I am pissing sweat now because I can't lose. This will be 5. This will be 5-0 to Al, I think, isn't it? 4-0 to Al, 5-0 to Al. Yeah. So
he's heading for Sheffield United figures on this one, Krisho, just to let you know.
Oh no! I'm gonna do my best for everybody out there. Yeah.
Hopefully, Krisho, you'll be able to. You'll be able to contribute positively here, because I have a quiz that I think you might be able to contribute to quite well, Krisho. Might be able to stretch back to see what kind of knowledge you have. Mm-hmm. As we know, lads, Anthony Gordon has just been called up to the England national squad. First time being called up to the senior squad. We hope to see him make his first get his first cap, play for England if Southgate doesn't bottle it and chicken out. Mm-hmm. So if he does, lads, I have a figure for you. If Anthony Gordon gets that senior cap in this international window, it would make him the 20th player to play for England during the Premier League era, which is 1992 onwards, while being on the books at Newcastle United. So this isn't just a player who played for England and also Newcastle. It's a players who played for England while playing for Newcastle. So there are 19 other names, other players since that 1992 who were capped for England while playing for Newcastle. And before you ask, Alan, it does include loan players as well, who may have been on loan at Newcastle and played for England. If there was any, I'm just going to throw it out there to tell you.
You mean like in the last 20 years? The last 20, last 30 years?
We're going back to 1992, 1993, so Premier League era. We have 19 players who have played for England while wearing the black and white the following week or the week previous. So, lads, we're going to take turns on this one. And seeing his form would dictate that Krisho would be maybe at a disadvantage here. We might let Krisho go first. So really simply, Krisho, I need the name of a player who you feel played for England or got a cap while playing for Newcastle in the last, what are we now? Probably 30-ish something years.
33 years. No,
33.
Alan Shearer, right? There you go, Al. In your face, Alan Shearer. Got him. Boom.
I see, Alan, he's gone for the difficult ones first.
Yes.
That seems to be his tactic so that you can't get them. Alan Shearer gets Krisho a point. I can tell you that Alan Shearer, his last cap was in the year 2000. He made 35 of his 63 appearances for England while playing for Newcastle. And the last cap was in Euro 2000 against Romania when England were knocked out. But we don't talk about that.
Lol.
Over to you, Alan.
I'll go with the current team. I'll go with Wilson.
Callum Wilson
Oh, yeah.
gets him a point.
How was I thinking?
He went to the Euros or the World Cup.
He did. Went to the World Cup, yeah, and came on as a sub, of course, as well. Didn't score, but he didn't do
Set one
himself
up for
any harm.
Grealish, I think.
Yes. Krisho, back to you.
We interviewed him on the show and we talked about his debut. Warren Barton.
Very good.
Warren Barton. 2 of his 3 England caps were while playing for Newcastle. As we discussed with Warren on episode 6, they were against Sweden and Brazil. Gets Krisho a point. Back to you, Alan.
I will go with our on-the-field captain of Kieran Trippier.
Kieran Trippier, 11 of his 46 England caps have come while playing for Newcastle, including the caps he earned in the World Cup 2022 and his last game against Malta in the Euro qualifiers, which hopefully he will go to in the summer. Krisho.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. One of the funniest missed penalties I've ever seen. David Batty, England versus Portugal.
David Batty is correct. 25 of his 42 caps were earned while playing for Newcastle, with his last cap coming in 1990, at the end of 1998, actually. And he was at that World Cup that year as well, and may have missed a penalty. Gets you a point, Krisho.
Yeah.
Alan.
Nick Pope. 3 or
Nick
4.
Pope. 2 of his 10 England caps have come while playing for Newcastle, both of them in the Nations League, a defeat to Italy and a draw with Germany in 2022. Gets you a point. Krisho.
I know 2 more, right? I know 2 more. That's it, right?
There's a lot more than 2 more on the list.
I know, right? But I'm old, right? So Rob Lee, one of my favorite players in the world. Rob Lee definitely played for England, I think like 3 times or 2 times. Because I mentioned it
Rob
before.
Lee earned 21 caps for England, I'll have you know.
Yikes.
All while playing for Newcastle, including 11 minutes during World Cup 98 against Colombia and last capped in October 98 against Luxembourg. He's got 4 in a row, Alan. Back to you.
I think this was the last player to be capped before the current squad. I think. And I think he may have been on loan to us. Was it Townsend?
Andy Townsend?
Andros Townsend?
Andros Townsend. I was just testing. Andros Townsend earned 1 cap for England while playing for Newcastle on loan, as you said, in a friendly where he came on as a sub against Australia in a 2-1 win, and he earned 13 caps in total in his career. Back to you, Krisho.
I know he played because like I used to pick. My brother used to give out to me for picking England in ISS Pro 2000s. You know the computer game that became Pro Evolution Soccer.
Yes.
Les Ferdinand played for England.
Sir Les Ferdinand.
Sir Les Ferdinand.
6 of his 17 England caps came while playing for Newcastle. His last cap was in 1997, and that was a World Cup qualifier against Italy, so it gets you a point.
That's it.
Nice. Alan.
Now, this one, I am actually not too sure if he got any caps after the Premier League started. But he is supposedly Krisho's favourite player.
Mm-hmm.
And it is
Jeff
Peter
Hendrick. No.
Beardsley.
Peter Beardsley
No way.
earned 25 caps for England while playing for Newcastle, 2 spells, with his last cap in a friendly against China in December 1996 while playing for Newcastle.
6.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
gets you a point.
It's very late.
Indeed.
Hear that?
Right. The scores are 5-5, Chris Show. No pressure. You're about halfway through this list, if not beyond.
Okay. This white wine's giving me a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, and it just reminded me that a certain player used to play for us. I don't know who I'm going to say. He's that odd guy that talks about like throwing rubbish into bins and stuff. Gobshite. Michael Owen. He definitely played for England because, I don't know, he was born there.
His knee exploded while he played for us in like a World Cup game, I think it was.
You may be right, Alan, because Michael Owen earned 18 of his 89 England caps while playing for Newcastle, played for England at World Cup 2006, and earned his last cap as an NUFC player against France in 2008. That's your point, Chris Show. Back to Alan.
Am I winning?
You are.
If he gets this right, it's like a penalty shootout, Chris Show. If he misses the next one, you're in a good spot.
Yes.
As someone who I know got England caps and definitely got them while playing for us is Kieran Dyer.
Kieran Dyer. Kieran Dyer earned 33 caps for England, 32 of which came while he was a Newcastle player. Was in the squads for the World Cup in 2002 and 2004, and his last cap was in 2007. Gets you a point. Good shout. Back to you, Chris Show. His head has just dropped for those of you listening via audio mediums.
Just go with strikers. Yeah, I don't know. Andy Carroll? I don't know. Yeah, Andy Carroll.
Mr. Andros Carroll has made 9 caps for England.
Yeah.
One of which came while he was a Newcastle player when he came on as a substitute in a 2-1 friendly defeat to France in November 2010.
Come on, Andy.
And I can tell you that Chris Show has just done the shooting the arrow celebration akin to Harvey Barnes and many others. Back to you, Alan.
I'm going to go with the second best centre-half to ever play for Newcastle United after Sven Botman. It's Jonathan Woodgate.
It would have been weird if he said Colaccini there, Chris Show, but he didn't. He did say Jonathan Woodgate. Jonathan Woodgate has earned 8 caps for England, one of which came as a Newcastle player in a friendly against Sweden in 2004. Definitely would have played more if he was able to walk or stand or kick or all of the above. Lads, the scores are neck and neck at 7 apiece. We are entering sudden death territory. No pressure at all, Chris Show.
Okay, I'm going to go with the best centre-half that ever played for us. Steve Howe.
Steve Howie is a shout.
He did.
And the reason it's a shout is because
he was in the game.
He has made 4 appearances for England, all of which came as a Newcastle player, all of which were friendlies, the last of which came against Nigeria in March 1996. I was left out of the Euros squad in that year. You were at the game.
I wasn't. I really wasn't.
I mean, Alan, I was going to say there was a chance that game might have been in Old Trafford and he was over.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking there.
Boo! You guys are the worst. Boo.
Boo. Okay. Right, lads. That's another point for Chris Show. Alan, do you have a response?
I have a couple knocking about that I think, that I know got England caps, but I don't know when they got them. So I'm going to go with someone who I hope still was knocking about the England squad. Nicky Butt.
Nicholas Butt has earned 39 caps for England, 4 of which came as a Newcastle player, the last of which was in 2004 in a friendly defeat to Spain. He's hit the back of the net, Chris Show. He's made it 8-8 in this epic battle. This is your finest performance yet, Chris Show. Don't let us down. Don't let the listeners down. Do it for the listeners. We have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 names left in my list. You've done well so far, boys. Back to you, Chris Show.
This is a complete stab in the dark. Yeah, total stab in the dark, right? Couldn't be. Jermaine Jenas.
He was one of mine as well.
Crisho steps up
it's
to the
right.
penalty spot. Crisho steps up to this penalty spot. He runs towards the ball. He stops. He does the little dink with his feet. And he smashes it in the back of the net. Jermaine Jenas. 13 of his 21 England caps have come while he was in a Newcastle shirt, and the last of which was in a friendly against Denmark in 2005. And Crisho takes the lead, Alan.
This is a good one. I'll give him this.
He's doing well.
I'm gonna go with someone who I know got caps again, but I'm praying he didn't get them when he was a Man Red player, and it's Alan Smith.
Alan Smith earned 19 caps for England, 2 of which came while he was playing for Newcastle United. Both friendlies in the year 2007 against Germany and Austria. And Alan has leveled it up once more.
I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
I can tell you, lads, we're officially in sudden death territory. We have 2 names left on this list. And it's back to Crisho Martin. Can he handle the pressure with the scores level on 9-9?
He had beautiful blonde hair, just like Warren Barton.
Well, I used to have beautiful blonde hair, just for the record. And I clearly don't anymore. But
And he was also in Pro Evolution Soccer. Way back when. Barry, Mother effing Venison.
Barry
Wasn't on
Venison.
my list.
We did talk about Barry Venison with Warren Barton. He had great things to say about him.
Did say
Barry Venison has 2 England caps,
Yes, he does.
both of which came during his Newcastle United career, with the last coming in March 1995 when he played 90 minutes against Uruguay. And that puts Crisho 10-9 in the lead. It's all down to Alan. It's all down to Alan.
Let's go, Al.
We need the music.
Yeah.
I can tell you, listeners, that Crisho's face is buzzing right now. He is praying for Alan to get it wrong so that he can redeem himself.
Gonna go with the last person to lift a kind of proper trophy for Newcastle. Scott Parker.
What trophy was that?
The Intertoto Cup. It was a certificate we got.
Yeah. Trophy might be a bit generous. Scott Parker
No.
had made 18 caps for England.
Played for Chelsea for a while though.
He did play for Chelsea for a while. Played for Fulham for a while.
And
Played for
Charlton one, yeah.
for a while. He did, however, make 1 appearance for England while he was on the books at Newcastle United.
Yeah,
A Euros qualifier against Croatia in 2006. I don't believe it, lads. This is a stellar performance by the boys because I can tell you we're neck and neck. It's 10 apiece, lads. I think I said there was 19 others. I meant to say there's 20 others, but you know what I mean. And what's even more fortunate, lads, in this series of unfortunate events show is that I do have a tie-break question, which I was not expecting to need. So for this one, lads, this is going to be fingers on the proverbial buzzers. Shout your name first if you know the answer to my next question. So shout your own name if you can get it right. Shouldn't be too hard. They're on the screen. The tie-break question is, lads, I just named out all of the players who earned an England cap while playing for Newcastle in the Premier League era. So what I want to know is, who was the last player to earn an England cap while on the books at Newcastle before the Premier League era?
Jeff Hendrick. Crisho.
I'll hold you for a second because I have to say I had Alan in my ear, didn't I, Alan?
I thought I won it myself now.
Leave it up to the listeners. If this was live, they could. Well, look, it's fine.
I'll tell you what I heard, Chris. I heard Alan and Jeff Hendrick at the same time. So if Alan gets this right, I'm just going to put it out there. Jeff Hendrick is costing you if Alan gets this right. What we want you to do, Krisho, is I'm going to go to Alan first, but I want you to write down your answer so we can see if you would have had it, just to make it even worse. And we'll add another unfortunate event to the list if this goes the way it might.
Alan, I think I actually know this answer.
Of course he does.
I am fairly sure I met this man outside St. James's Park when I was only 12 or 13. And it is the wonderful Malky MacDonald.
I can tell you, it is not.
No.
Malky MacDonald.
So
it's going to go over to Krisho.
It's Mickey Quinn.
Krisho's holding up a sheet, and I can tell you, it is not Mickey Quinn.
What?
Oh.
So it's going back out there again to the floor. So we're going for the last player before basically 92 to earn an England cap for Newcastle. So by me saying that, I'm indicating it's a little bit more recent than the two names you've given me, potentially. Although I'm not sure in the Mickey Quinn era. They're stumped, listeners. What we do want to know, listeners, is if you have this, and you'll know very soon if you did, do be sure to get onto the YouTube channel,
Alan.
get onto the video and write it in the comments if you did get it before Alan and Krisho. Alan is rubbing his hands. He has shouted his name. Alan, who do you think it is?
Is it Chris Waddle?
Chris Waddle. 1985. Did earn a cap for England while playing for Newcastle. In fact, he earned 8 of them. And it is the correct answer, I'm afraid, Krisho. Alan's hands are in the air. He wins the tie break after it went to 10 apiece. Krisho's head is in his hands, ruining the day he ever met or heard of Jeff Hendrick. But it didn't matter in the end.
85, Jesus
Chris
Christ.
Waddle is the correct answer, and what a player he was indeed.
Well done, Alan. Well done on your engagement. Well done on everything.
Thanks very much.
Lads, I have to say, and no offense, Krisho, right? But just based on your historical quiz performance, I was not expecting to go 10 for 10 there. I was not expecting you to get to the 12th round and for it to go to the judges' points and all that kind of stuff. But fair play, Alan. A little bit narrower than previous quizzes, and fair play, Krisho, for holding it. But it is Alan who continues his reign as the Irish Mastermind champion until, as we've said, I get my hands on him, and until we get Krisho in the hot seat for me to take on Alan. But that will be all.
Let's do that the next time. It will be, because it's really sad. I keep losing all the time.
Here, look, Krisho, that was. I was sure you had Chris Waddle written down on that piece of paper, and I'm sad to see. I was sad to see you didn't. But a serious effort nonetheless. Right, lads.
Right.
Thank you for that. That just about wraps up episode 16 for this week, lads. A big thank you to Alan and to Krisho for bringing their brains and their opinions and their knowledge to the show after all the wonderful news at the weekend, which included Alan getting engaged and Krisho getting a new vacuum cleaner. If you're enjoying these podcasts, please be sure to subscribe and smash that like button on YouTube. Drop us a follow over on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave a comment where you can. Leave a rating where you can. It'll all help us spread the Irish Mag's word even further. We'll be back for more Irish Magnus next week and maybe even another Magstermind quiz. So until then, lads, how are the lads? Slán go fóill, and we'll see you all very soon. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Long lads.
Slán, lads. Slán, Wally, fellas.
Slán, bye, 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 bye.